Hey all, Zook here, back with another guide for Dark Souls 2 bosses. This time we're looking at the spider boss, Duke's Dear Freya. Just to quickly get into some of the stats for this boss, she's going to be weakest to fire damage and most resistant to dark damage, although none of the elements really do that much more damage to her. To take advantage of the weakness to fire, I would recommend using one of the 3 charcoal pine resins, which you can grab on the way down to this boss. For my inventory, I have my normal healing items, but then most importantly, I also have a flame butterfly. Speaking of which, you may have noticed there is a new equipment picture that hasn't been present for the other boss guides I've made, the torch. Both melee and ranged methods, which I'm going to show you here, are going to be fought with the torch active in order to scare away the little spiders in the area. So I would make sure that you have a flame butterfly in case your torch accidentally goes out. If you want a guide on how to fight this boss without a torch, then you can go find a video that's made by somebody who doesn't detest bugs like I do. But as we're taking a look at the equipment, I'll point out that in my main hand, I have a melee option in the rapier, and I also have one-handed ranged options like the crossbow and my staff. Since the torch will be active the entire fight, I'm not going to want anything useful to be in my offhand slots, and I want to make sure that any weapons which I'm going to use don't require 2 hands. And while I'm not positive about this, since I play on console and don't have a great way of testing this by myself, I would assume that thrust damage should be Freya's weakest resistance, since most of the scaly enemies are going to be weakest to thrust in this game. As far as my rings, the 3 that are highly recommended are the Old Leo ring, Ring of Blades, and Chloranthy ring. The 4th slot, you can have whatever other ring you want. I personally have the stone ring still equipped, just because I use that to stagger the Spider-Man enemies on my way to the boss. But other options could be the Silver Cat ring if you used it to take less damage on the descent to the boss, or the Silver Serpent ring if you want it pre-equipped for optimizing souls from the boss. And finally, as I'd mentioned before, you'll want the torch to be active the entire fight. I want a minimum of 3 minutes for new game if I'm using my melee, minimum of 5 minutes if I'm doing ranged, and then add a couple of minutes for each NG cycle beyond that. I'll put links in the description detailing where you can find flame butterflies and torches in case you need help finding any of those items, since I know they aren't particularly useful outside of this fight. But otherwise, let's go ahead and take a look at the various attacks which Freya can do, followed by an example of a melee and a ranged fight against her. Alrighty. So coming up first here, we'll take a look at a projectile-based strategy against Freya. This strategy will work really well if you're choosing to use pyromancies that you could have gotten from Rosabeth at this point, or if you've already freed Ornifex and bought Firebolts, that could also work well. As you can see, I'm going to go down the far side of the chamber just so that I can bait these undead peasants up the web so that I don't have to worry about them staggering me out of the fog gate. And you could also use an alluring skull if you drop down other ways as well, or just fight them. But as we make it into the fight, Freya will always start with the same 3-piece attack. She'll do 2 medium range stomps, followed by 2 long range, then a lunging bite attack that also spits acid. And for this specific strategy, it's actually the ideal attack to see during the real fight, and I'll mention why when we see it later. But for right now, as she draws her legs up and close to her head, we expect the laser attack, so we run past the first leg so that we're in a safe spot, since that first leg acts as a boundary for the laser. We try to shoot while the head's still rotating so the arrows don't bounce off her armor meanwhile. And as we continue to strafe counterclockwise, you just saw her medium range leg stomps, and we'll see those plenty of times throughout the fight. And the spider webs don't track you after she's decided that she's doing the spider webs. So if you notice that attack, just move out of the way a little bit as I do here, and you should be just fine. So now that her attacks have calmed down a little bit, so she's just going to do some lasers and some leg stomps, I'll mention the point I wanted to make earlier about her 3-piece attack, where if you see these medium stomps, notice how I'm able to get 1 punish off during the first set, and then when she does that second set of leg stomps, I can get another 1 or 2 punishes in. And ideally, if she also does that biting attack where she spits out the acid and everything, you can actually get up to 5 shots on her before she even begins another attack. So the safest punishable attack would definitely be that 3-piece. And you'll also see, if you choose to watch the melee method, which will be coming up here in another couple minutes after this fight is done, you'll see another strategy that you can use as well if you want to kind of safely punish attacks, which would be running under her body when you see this laser. And again, I'll mention that when we actually see it, which will be in the melee video, not really in this one. But it is the typical strategy that people tend to do if they're trying to do some sort of no-hit or especially safe strategy. Then they tend to run under the body to the other head to try and punish it. And so as we're just shooting all of our arrows here, you'll notice that I actually really kind of wish that I had had the health bar up, the HUD. This is kind of the only fight that I actually would really want the HUD up, just because this is the fight where you have no idea how much damage you're actually doing, and unless you pay attention to the audio cues, which, I mean, audio is muted for this video, you can't tell if you've hit Freya unless you actually see the health bar go down, or if you just hear an audio cue. So I don't believe that that one hit right there, even though it seems like it should have. So ideally, you do want to be in front of her to actually hit her. But again, you'll figure out some of these timings as you actually try this fight a little bit more. And so from here, I ran out of projectiles, decided to get the rapier, and that is exactly why you don't want to get up close. I tend not to show many of the hits that I take as I'm recording all of these. I tend to try and put a perfect run in as opposed to something where I get hit. But that right there, and this as well, these are the exact reasons why you want to maintain as much distance as possible from Freya. She is exceptionally scary to fight up close. And maybe it's just the arachnophobe in me. I don't know. But especially that leg stomp, the stomp storm, I believe is what I called it. This attack that you've just seen, the one that also hit me earlier, that attack is so hard to dodge. And if you do choose to do range, then you can maintain that distance and not even have to worry about it. Basically just baiting out the 3-piece leg stomp and this laser attack should be more than safe. Now, when she does this, notice how she kind of digs her front 2 claws into the ground and then looks up into the air. That means that she's jumping. And as far as I can tell, she will only jump if you've been using ranged attacks. So you won't see a jump in the next fight. And when I've done other fights that took like 10 minutes, she doesn't tend to do it if you're only using melee. So another reason why this melee fight coming up would be the one that I personally recommend. Okay, and now for the melee strategy. This fight basically going to boil down to maintain some distance and bait out the laser attack. She'll start out with the same stomp, and we use a charcoal pine resin just because she is weak to fire and we have to bide our time anyways. When she does this web spit here, we are just going to walk off to the side. We only want to punish the laser. And now that we see her lift up her legs, we're going to run over to the other side, attack 3 to 4 times. If you attack 4 times, then she's a little bit less likely to use this laser attack. We actually lucked out there that she did back-to-back lasers. But basically, if she does the laser, just run over to the other side. That's it. Be aware that your weapon will bounce off her armor if you hit outside of the face hitbox, so ideally you want to position yourself directly in front of her face while attacking just to avoid an accidental bad hitbox. But as you can see, anytime that she does the stomps or the web spit, we're just going to wait it out off to the side, wait for the laser attack to actually punish. As I mentioned towards the end of the range fight, even if this melee fight goes on for several minutes for whatever reason, you typically won't see her do the jump attack as long as you aren't shooting her with projectiles, so you aren't really going to have to worry about her repositioning. But as I finish up the fight, I'll point out 2 benefits to this strategy. First off, it's almost twice as fast as the range strategy since you're getting more hits in consistently. And second, it will naturally spread out the damage between the 2 heads, meaning you won't really have to worry about one of the heads breaking off and the positioning problems that might come from only having the one target to attack. But that's it for the fight. Make sure that you grab this Great Soul under the Dragon's Mouth, which allows you to come back at the end of the game for a neat little lore surprise. And that'll be it for this boss. So hopefully you found something that helped in this video, and I will catch you in the next one.